Hey everyone, Dave here, and today I've got something a little bit different for you. I haven't made a video like this before, but today I'm going to be doing a deck tech for one of my EDH decks. Now you might have seen this deck in my EDH versus CEDH video, and it is Ayula, Queen Among Bears. I got a request for the deck list for this deck, but I figured I'd do one better and just do a full deck tech for it. So, a little bit about Ayula. It's a bear, so it's a 2/2 for 2 mana, 1 and a green. Has the ability, whenever another bear enters the battlefield under your control, choose one, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target bear, or target bear you control fights target creature you don't control. So there's a couple of different ways that I've seen people build this deck. I think the more competitive one is to make it kind of like a Voltron deck, where with all of your bears, when they trigger Ayula, you just put counters on Ayula, and then you make her super big and just win via commander damage. And I've seen another way that I think is kind of a meme-y type of way to build the deck, is to put literally every bear you can find in the deck, just so you can maximize the amount of triggers. But I don't I'm sure it's a fun way to play, but if you want to win games while also having fun, I wouldn't recommend it, because most of the bears in Magic are not very good. So if you want to be playing a bunch of them, you have to be playing a lot of kind of crappy creatures. But there are enough of them where you can play enough to reliably trigger Ayula, but also be playing good cards in your deck. So that's kind of how I've built this deck, is to be playing the good bears, but also good cards in the deck as well. And this isn't a fully tuned deck, but I would say it's still somewhat powerful. I would be comfortable playing this against powered decks. Actually, the way that this deck came about was I only had one EDH deck with me here. But I saw Ayula, so I figured I'd just throw together something. Like, I just had an Ayula and I put like all of my playable green cards together in it, but it seemed super fun, so I started putting better cards in it, and I've gradually been tuning it to the point where I think it's somewhat powerful at this point. So here's the commander. I'll throw it up here in the frame. So I have these first 3 creatures. They're all essentially the same. It's just my 1 mana dorks, Elvish Mystic, Arbor Elf, and Llanowar Elves. They are not bears, but they're good cards, and you really want to have one of these on turn 1 if you can. It just makes such a huge difference. It gives you a really big boost, and I found that, to me anyway, the most important thing when playing Commander is to get a mana advantage, because it snowballs really quickly, and these just help with that. That is the same idea with the next card here, Sakura-Tribe Elder. It's just one of the best ramp cards you can play, so I'm playing it. It's a great blocker. Typically what you do with this is usually what you do is you just sacrifice it the turn you play it, but you can do like a block sack with it, just block an attack and then sacrifice it. This is the first sort of bear in the deck, Universal Automaton. This is a French one, but it's Universal Automaton. It's just a 1/1 for 1, but it's a changeling, so it's a bear. So this is actually quite a good card, because for just 1 mana, I can trigger Ayula's ability. Usually, when I'm playing a bear, I'll typically choose this second ability. I've found that the way I like to do it is basically have all of my creatures essentially be removal spells also, because I can just have something fight another creature whenever I play a bear. The next creature, which is a bear but not a bear, is Metallic Mimic. It's a 2/1 artifact creature for 2. It can be any creature type, so obviously bear, and each other creature I control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. So it makes all of my bears enter the battlefield a little bit bigger. Here's an actual bear. This is one of, like, it's a 2/2 for 2, but it has flash. But honestly, that's quite good in this deck, I think, is having flash, because this is pretty much a removal spell for 2 mana, because I can trigger Ayula's ability at instant speed. Maybe I can block with Ayula and then play this at instant speed and make her bigger and eat something in combat. This card I think is one of the better bears, just because it has flash and it's cheap. There's Spectral Bears here. It's a 3/3 for 2. What does it say? If it's declared as an attacker and defending player controls no black cards, it doesn't untap during my next untap phase. That's a pretty weird ability, but I'm just playing this because it's a bear and it only costs 2 mana. And honestly, 3/3 for 2, it's decent abilities, they're a decent size. Mother Bear is one of the better bears. It's one of the newer ones, also came out in Modern Horizons along with Ayula, but it's a 2/2 for 2. But this ability it has, I can pay 5 mana and exile it from my graveyard to make 2/2 bear tokens. That's quite a good ability, because this gives me 1 Ayula trigger when I play it, and also it gives me 2 triggers later on when I exile it from the graveyard. Werebear, it's a 2 mana bear, but it's also a mana dork, so that's pretty good. It serves 2 purposes. I get an Ayula trigger, and also it helps me ramp. Got a Balduvian Bears. This one is literally just a bear. It's a 2/2 for 2. But, I mean, it allows me to trigger Ayula for just 2 mana, so it's not so bad. Same idea with Runeclaw Bear. And straight up Grizzly Bears, but it's foil. So there's that. Into the 3 mana bears, I got a Dragon Scarred Bear. It's a 3/2 for 3, but I can regenerate it if I have, creatures with power total 8 or greater. Could be relevant if I want to fight something. Got an Alpine Grizzly, this one's just a 4/2 for 3. Ulvenwald Bear, it's a 2/2 for 3, but it has Morbid, so it could potentially be a 4/4 if a creature died when I play it. Vivian's Grizzly is one of the good bears too. It's a 2/3 for 3, but this ability that it has is pretty good. I can pay 4 mana to look at the top card of my library. If it's creature or planeswalker, I can reveal it and put it into my hand. So, I mean, it's an Ayula trigger, but also it can potentially help me find some more gas. And since this is a green deck, I'm looking to do a lot of ramping and to have a lot of mana, so I could be using this ability multiple times per turn. Here's another bear that's not a bear, an Adaptive Automaton. So this is, I don't think there are any actual bear lords yet. Like, there's Ayula, but she doesn't give bears any bonus. Giving them plus more power and toughness. So this is essentially my bear lord. So those are all of the bears. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, only 14 bears. But personally, I think that's enough. And then there's also a couple more cards. There's some artifacts and sorceries that allow me to create bear tokens. So with those combined with these, I think that's enough bears to make this deck work. And I wouldn't be playing, because these are the best ones that I could find. So I don't really feel like I need to be reaching into the bad bear cards just to up the bear count. Got Eternal Witness. It's just an awesome card in green. Allows me to rebuy any card from my graveyard when it comes into play. Rishkar. I like this card. It's a great ramp card. He says when he comes into play, put a 1/1 counter on up to 2 creatures. But this is great with Ayula, because he also says each creature I control with a counter on it has tap, add a green. So with Ayula, I can be putting +1/+1 counters on many of my creatures, and this guy allows them to tap for extra mana. Solemn Simulacrum. I mean, it's a pretty iconic commander card. It's card draw and ramp. This is something I've kind of wavered on in this deck. It's not amazing, but it's good enough to play. But when the better bear comes out, I might end up cutting this. Oh, here's another bear that I missed. A couple of them, actually. So this is actually a 4-mana bear. It's just a 2/2 for 4, but when it comes into play, I draw a card. So honestly, that's pretty good. For 4 mana, I get a 2/2, I get to trigger Ayula, and I get to draw a card. I'd play that. Goreclaw is pretty awesome. It's another legendary bear. This could be... I mean, if I had a secondary commander, I guess this could be it, but it doesn't really have any bear synergy. But he makes my creatures with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. And whenever he attacks, each creature I control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample. The trample is pretty big because if I'm going to be triggering Ayula a lot, I could end up with some pretty big creatures and giving them trample. That'll allow me to get through some damage. Got a Temur Sabertooth. I like this card just as a good green card. Like, there's no bear synergy or anything. But this activated ability is super good. I can pay 2 mana, return another creature I control to my hand, and if I do, Temur Sabertooth gains Indestructible. There's 2 things that are good about that. One is this gets Indestructible, so it can live through a Wrath, and I can keep reusing this ability. But also, the ability to just return something to my hand is quite good, because I can, if I've run out of bears, I can just return a bear that I have to my hand so that I can replay it and re-trigger Ayula. Maybe fight something down if I need to remove a creature. Chameleon Colossus is just a good green card. It's a bear also, so that's awesome, because it's a changeling. I guess it's the biggest of the bears. It's got Pro Black, and I can pay 4 mana to give it +X/+X until end of turn where X is its power. So it's one of the better bears that is not a bear. This is a newer card, but I like this card a lot. It's from Commander 2019, I think. Ohran Frostfang. It's a 2/6 for 5, so kind of weird stats, but it says attacking creatures I control have Death Touch. And also, whenever a creature I control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I think this is pretty awesome because, I mean, since it gives my guys Death Touch, probably my opponents don't want to block. But if they don't block, then I get to draw cards. I just think this card's pretty cool. This is one of my favorite cards, Apex Altisaur. It's basically potentially reusable Wrath for 9 mana. It's a lot of mana, but I'm playing green, so I have lots of mana. It's a 10/10. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature I control, and whenever it's dealt damage, I can fight up to 1 target creature I don't control. So since it's a 10/10, chances are it's going to be able to fight a lot of stuff and live. Most of the time when you play this, it's just like a one-sided Wrath. It's pretty awesome. And also, it's a cool dinosaur. Vorinclex, one of the best green cards for Commander. It causes a lot of hate, but I mean, it's very good. It doubles all of my mana, and whenever an opponent taps a land, it makes it not untapped during the next untap step. I think that's it for the creatures. So onto the artifacts. Got a few equipment here. Since I want Ayula to be staying in play, like she's kind of a removal magnet, I've got both Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, just to give her hexproof/shroud. Basilisk Collar is super good in this deck, because for just 2 to equip, it gives the equipped creature Death Touch and Lifelink. But with Ayula, you're going to have your creatures fighting a lot. So if your creature that's fighting has Death Touch and Lifelink, it's going to automatically kill whatever it fights and also gain you some life. It's pretty awesome. Sword of Sinew and Steel. I mean, it's not the best sword, but it's... My other swords are in other decks, and I mean, it is a good sword. Get +2/+2 pro black and red whenever the equipped creature deals damage to a player. Destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and 1 target artifact. So I mean, I'm just kind of playing it because it's a sword that I have that's not in one of my other decks, so I'll put it in this deck. And honestly, all of the swords are good. Helm of the Host, this card is awesome. Could go in like literally every commander deck, I guess. I mean, I want to be making copies of Ayula. That's pretty amazing. Also, actually, is that If I equip this to Ayula and I start getting copies of it whenever I play bears, I'm going to be getting so many triggers from her. Or even to not put it on Ayula, well, just realizing now that the copies of Ayula would trigger the Ayulas that were already in play. So yeah, it's a pretty sweet card for this deck. Just a little bit of artifact ramp. Got both Mox Amber and Soul Ring. So, I mean, don't need to say anything about Soul Ring. Mox Amber, though. I like this card a lot. Personally, I think it should be in pretty much every commander deck that has a commander that costs 3 or less mana. Just because, I mean, chances are you're not going to need this to get your commander out. But if you have your commander on turn 2 or 3, playing a Mox for 0 and tapping it for mana is pretty big. This is one of the artifacts that creates bears. Birthing Boughs. Pay 4, tap it, create a 2/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token. So shapeshifters are bears. So this allows me to repeatedly trigger Ayula. Psionic Resonator for copying Ayula's triggered ability. Vanquisher's Banner, because it is a tribal deck, so gives all my bears +1/+1, allows me to draw cards when I play bears. Conjurer's Closet, this is another one of my pet cards. I played one of my first standard decks around this card, but since Ayula is enter the well, her ability isn't enter the battlefield, but it triggers off of enter the battlefield. So this flickering a creature every turn allows me to re-trigger Ayula. Mimic Vat to help me create more bears, or I mean, create anything. If there's something better than a bear, I could make a copy of it. But it's mainly in here because it allows me to create more bears. Oblivion Stone is kind of a weird card, but I included it in here just because I like having a kind of a catch-all answer to everything, and Oblivion Stone is good for that. Panharmonicon, amazing card. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability, it triggers a second time, so works well with Ayula. The Great Henge, super good card for EDH. Goes in many green decks, and this is one of them. It's great for ramp, drawing extra cards, making my creatures bigger, gaining life. Sounds good to me. Got a Crozen Grip for some artifact/enchantment removal. Heroic Intervention to give my guys indestructible and hexproof. Beast Within, another catch-all answer. Force of Vigor. It's a super good answer to artifacts and enchantments. Nature's Lore is kind of a weird inclusion. This is another one that I feel like will be replaced with a different card when I get a better one. But, like, even just as a, you know, basically a rampant growth, it's fine because it's kind of better than artifact ramp because it allows me to get a land, so chances are the lands are going to stay in play longer than artifacts are. But also, Nature's Lore is better than rampant growth in, I guess, a mono green deck anyway, because the land comes into play untapped. Usually it's irrelevant, but say I have say on turn 2, I draw one of my 1 mana dorks. I could play this, get an untapped land, and then also play my mana dork. It's pretty good. Cultivate for more ramp. Kodama's Reach, same as Cultivate. Rishkar's Expertise, pretty popular card in green decks for EDH. Just allows me to draw a bunch of cards, play something for free. Primal Command, it's just kind of it's got so many options on it. I mean, it's a really flexible card. I can gain life, put something on top of the opponent's library, shuffle the graveyard to the library, which can be relevant against graveyard decks, or I can look for a creature, put it into my hand. I play this card in my other green EDH deck too. I'm gonna make some more room here. And just do something like this. Harvest Season, this was kind of a later addition to the deck, but I think this card's pretty sweet. I can look for up to X basic land cards from my library, put them into play tapped, where X is the number of tapped creatures I control. So, like, even if I'm casting this where X is 2, that's still pretty great. Look for 2 lands and put them into play for 3 mana. Imagine if it's like 4 or 5. I think this card is, like personally I think it's a little bit underutilized, but I can see how some decks might not want it, but I think it's a great ramp card. Genesis Wave, pretty awesome if you get a lot of mana. Typically when I play a Genesis Wave I want to be playing it for 8 to find a Crater Hoof, but Crater Hoof isn't in this deck. So, I don't know, I can be playing this for maybe like 5 would be a good enough number. Basically I just want to be finding lots of bears with this. Grizzly Fate, it's a sorcery that creates 2 2/2 bear tokens, but also, with the threshold also, if I have, wait, how does threshold work again? I think I need 7 cards in my graveyard, and then instead I put 4 bears into play, so triggering Ayula 4 times at once is pretty awesome, but also has flashback for 7. So onto the Planeswalkers, I've got a few of them in here. Got this Vivian Monsters Advocate. It's a new card, but I think this card is super good, mostly because of the passive ability. I can look at the top card of my library anytime and I can cast creatures from the top of my library. So good for if I run out of gas, just cast stuff off the top of my library. Too bad it doesn't make bears, it makes beasts, but it can make a beast every turn. And the -2, whenever I cast my next creature spell this turn, look for a creature in my library that has lesser CMC than the creature I cast and put it into play. It's pretty awesome. Got this Jiang Yanggu. This is a French one, but since I'm putting... So his passive ability is the same as Rishkar. Well, kind of the same as Rishkar. Rishkar says any creature with a counter on it can tap for mana. This guy says any creature with a +1/+1 counter can tap for mana. So since I have lots of creatures with +1/+1 counters, this card seems great to play. And I can drop it like that, or I can -1 to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. Nissa, who shakes the world. Nissa, who shakes up standard and historic and wrecks the formats, but I mean, it doubles all my green. It's pretty awesome. Words of Wilding is a cool card. It's an enchantment that says I can pay 1 and the next time I would draw a card instead put a 2/2 bear into play. It's a good way to get multiple bear tokens. You can get a lot of use out of that card. Because a lot of the time, if I'm going to draw a card, I just want it to be a bear, just to trigger Ayula. So just rather than potentially drawing a land or something, I can just use this and guarantee to draw a bear. This card is a checklist. It is Growing Rights of Itlimoc, though. I have the checklist card because these sleeves are translucent. Do have the actual card here, though. So Growing Rights. It's an awesome enchantment that flips into a better Gaia's Cradle. Zendikar Resurgent. Super good green EDH card. Doubles all my mana and lets me draw cards when I cast creatures. Bearscape. Great for bears. Pay 2, remove 2 cards from my graveyard from the game and make a bear. Another card that allows me to repeatedly make bears. Asceticism is cool because it gives all my creatures hexproof and allows me to regenerate them, so that's great with Ayula. So it makes her harder to remove. Onto the lands. I've got a Hash-Up Oasis. A lot of these lands are kind of just because it's like it's a monocolored deck, so I don't really have to worry too much about, well, I don't have to worry at all about being color screwed unless I just have colorless mana. But just got things thrown in here that are kind of just better than a forest. So Hash-Up Oasis is that, it taps for green. I don't see the ability being super relevant, but in the small chance that it is, I have it. Ghost Quarter to destroy lands that could be problematic. Myriad Landscape. It's sort of a rampy type of card, I guess. Yavimaya Hollow. It's pretty cool. I can pay green, tap it, and regenerate a creature. Taps for colorless, though. This is a Blast Zone in French. It's a great utility card that I can use to destroy whatever. It's kind of like an Engineered Explosives. So since this is, like I was saying, since it's monocolored, I kind of get the ability to play a lot of these colorless utility lands that I might otherwise be stretching the colors in a multicolored deck. Got an Archer of Orazca to draw some extra cards. Karn's Bastion, Proliferate. Good if I have lots of 1/1 counters on creatures to proliferate. Gaia's Cradle, because why not put a Gaia's Cradle in a deck that's otherwise sort of budgety. But, I mean, I had one and this is my green deck that I have with me, so I'll put it in here. This is a Tranquil Thicket, it's just a cycling land. Enters the battlefield tapped, or I can pay green to cycle it. Castle Garenbrig, great for ramp. I can pay 4 mana and add 6 green. And then a bunch of forests that are mismatched. Some snow-covered forests, French snow-covered forest, French... Oh wait, that's not French. I don't know what language that is. Anyway, yeah. A whole bunch of mismatched forests. So that's my Ayula deck. As I keep getting better cards to put in it, I'll replace them and maybe fix up these weird forests. But I don't know, let me know what you think. Do you play Ayula, and what cards do you think are good for it that I might not be playing? Otherwise, if you like videos like this, it'd be cool if you could subscribe, like, and all that. And I'll talk to you later.